Hi, I'm Jane Farnham from Great British Speakers, and I'm here today chatting to Britain's strongest disabled man and motivational speaker, the incredible Dave Walsh. Good morning, Dave.
Good morning, Jane. Thanks for that entrance. It was amazing.
It was so lovely to see you in your smiley face this morning, and I'm really glad to be able to chat to you. Now, let me just give a little bit of background to those that don't know anything about you. Dave was a fairly regular guy with a life in the military. You followed with a string of strongman feats, didn't you? And that then all changed suddenly as you found yourself not only in pain, but with a huge mental health mountain to climb. So, firstly, tell us about your life leading up to 2014.
Yeah, so prior to my life in 2014, I was a very active person. Like I say, I was in the military for 9 years, did a tour of Iraq, and my last post, I was actually an adventure training instructor. So I used to take people up and down mountains all the time. I'd often do the same mountain 7 days, every day of the week for 7 days. So after leaving the military, it was quite difficult because I wanted to stay active, but I didn't want to do all that again. So I stumbled into strongman, and that was just by purely me going to the gym thinking I was strong, and people calling me out on it really, and I had to put my money where my mouth was, and I did. I competed in my first strongman competition in 2012, and then from there, I think I competed in maybe 6 or 7 good competitions, quite decent competitions around Britain. I was traveling quite a lot to get to them. Yeah, strongman was kind of my life. And I also have children, so I was a very active father. I was always the one going out playing football or doing whatever they wanted, really. So for all that to come to an end in 2014 was a bit of a shock to the whole world, I'd say, but to everyone in my house who is my world, I guess.
Yeah, well, it's a huge mountain to climb. So tell us exactly what happened in 2014. Was it an immediate moment that changed, or was it something gradual that happened?
Yeah, so it was very gradual, I guess. I was my right arm just randomly went numb, and at this point, I was training for Wales' Strongest Man. I was also working a lot of hours while my wife was at university. So I was pushing maybe like 90 hours a week, some weeks at work. So I kind of thought I was maybe a little bit exhausted, and my right arm went numb, and it was really random. Just went numb one day, and just kind of I left it for a few weeks without telling anyone, and eventually it kind of spread from my right arm, and it was kind of like everywhere was kind of numb. But again, I kind of left it thinking that it'll go away or it'll pass, or maybe I've trapped a nerve in my neck. I was telling my friends, and everyone kind of thought it was quite random and quite funny. I was kind of being a bit wasn't really facing that it could be quite serious. And I guess I left it maybe a month or two before I was kind of forced to go see the doctor to get it checked out. And from seeing the doctor, he sent me for tests that day, up in the hospital, and I was having MRIs, I was having lumbar punctures, and yeah, eventually it only took about 3 or 4 weeks. So, but I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis.
Wow, I bet that's hit you like a ton of bricks, eh?
It definitely did. I remember it fills me with a bit of shame because my MS is in my family. So my uncle had MS and my grandmother had MS. But for me at that point, when the doctor said you have MS, I didn't overly know what it was.
Right.
I was really ashamed with myself for not helping more with my uncle or grandmother, or not even learning what MS was. So I didn't overly know what to think. I remember going to the car with my wife, and I just started crying, thinking like this is it, this is over. I've got, what I think I told her to leave me. I was kind of wanted to be on my own, and but I was crying, and but I didn't overly know what I was crying about because I didn't know what MS was, if you know what I mean. So it's quite difficult, and Google is could be your best friend or your worst enemy.
Yeah.
So jumping on the Google Doc, there was quite a bad experience for me. As soon as you put in multiple sclerosis, you kind of get, you know, a really huge range of the worst types of MS that it can be, really.
So how does it affect you day to day? Are you wheelchair bound?
Yeah, so I've got progressive MS now, so it's kind of you usually diagnosed with relapse remitting, where it comes and it goes and it comes and it goes, or it could never come and go. It could. I know people who have had MS for 30 odd years and never been affected by it. But myself, I've got progressive MS, so I've got some permanent scars on my spine, my brain because of it, and so I am wheelchair bound all the time. I can't walk. I could barely take a step or two without falling over or my legs buckling. I still have issues with my right hand where it went numb. It's never come back, so I get issues there. Um, and I get quite a bit of fatigue. So if I'm doing too much, I could be overly fatigued. So that kind of, when I train strongman, I have to be quite smart about things, about how I train and about how, if we've got things planned, I just can't train, or I can't do the things that we've planned. I have to put priorities into place.
Yeah. So I'd imagine then, Dave, it's not just a physical issue for you. It's obviously a huge resilience and mental health one too.
Absolutely. I've definitely battled my mental health demons over the years. When I was first diagnosed, I was still able to compete in able-bodied strongman, and so it wasn't really affecting me straight away. It was I remember training for Britain's Strongest Man, and during the training for it, I had a bit of a bad relapse where I was struggling to walk and I kept buckling from underneath me. I was falling over all of the time. So I qualified for this competition, which is quite an elite competition, and I wanted to go. So I thought, I'm still going to go because I qualified for it, and this would probably be my last chance to do it. So I went. I did awful. I did so bad. I fell over at everything. I couldn't lift up weights that I was very comfortable with usually lifting up weights. And I remember at one point I picked up an Atlas stone, which is the big concrete stone. I picked it up to my lap. I think it was about 140 kilos. And as it was on my lap, I fell backwards with it, and the stone went rolling. I failed the event. And yeah, that was kind of a quite a dark push out of strongman for me. My whole body said, "Get out! You're not doing this anymore." And when I left the gym and just didn't go back, it kind of, that's when my mental health started to deteriorate, and the pain was getting worse and my symptoms were getting worse, and I just kind of had no end goal, no light to kind of roll towards to see, you could get out of this dark time. And it took a few years, where I was diagnosed with depression. I was on antidepressants, and then I hoaxed up plans on how I could amputate my own legs and things. And that I've actually still got the drawing somewhere of the design I made. So to think that you sat down and you actually thought about how you're going to do that is quite crazy now. Um, but it came to a head. My wife was like, "Look, you have to get back into something. Sport was kind of your life." And um, I didn't know that disabled strongman existed at this point. And when I first saw it, again, I was brought with a lot of shame. I thought, gosh, I love strongman so much that I didn't know about the disabled side of it. So I kind of threw everything into this sport and everything into the competitions. And yeah, it kind of massively brought me out of my dark place, I guess. And I'm not totally out of there yet. I mean, I'm very open. I'm still on antidepressants, but for me, I'm so happy when I compete, and so, I just have goals in mind now.
Baby steps.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, do you know what? It's really truly inspiring hearing you talk because you've been through so much mentally and physically, and obviously you're still, it affects you daily. How did this then lead into speaking? When did it start and how did you get involved?
So it was during, I think, the very first lockdown. I was asked to do quite a lot of podcasts, and I was very much not too sure about it. But I was speaking to this chap who I did my first podcast with, and he was like, I spoke to him over the phone. He was like, "You're kind of a natural, and you've got a story to tell. We'll just tell it. If you're not happy with it, we won't release it." So I started talking on his podcast, and I just found that I had so much to say. And when I was looking back at the things I've gone through, and the resilience I've had to put forward, it's kind of like, yeah, I have done an awful lot. And then he was kind of listening. Well, I hope he was listening anyway. He was listening to me, and he was just, so in awe, and he had so many questions about it that I kind of thought, I have got a story to tell, and it could benefit, if it could benefit someone. So I'm going to start telling the story. And I was invited to people's workplaces, and yeah, it just found like I was having maybe like 100, people from global companies just listening to my story, and the kind receptions I've had from them, about how my story has potentially changed, or influenced their life in a good way, was, to me, that was straight away. I have to tell my story. I have to get it out there. And it was actually some oh, a boy from a local town, quite near to me, that his mum kind of follows me on social media. And she actually sent me a picture of her son, he's got Angelman's disease. So he's in a wheelchair, and it's quite an autistic trait. He actually dressed up for me as his sports star for Sports Relief, and that to me was like, that's it. It's helped him. So let's do this. Let's see how far we can get.
That must feel great. That must give you so much, spur you on so much.
Yeah, absolutely. And he doesn't realize, and I don't think he ever will, that how much he impacts me to keep going, and how much, messages like that kind of keeps you going, and keeps you going to the next competition. And, that's kind of, I would do all this if it was just me on my own, but to know people get something out of it is just the icing on the cake.
So let's talk about your speaking. Obviously, you've got an amazing backstory. What sort of things do you talk about that would be relatable to an audience, maybe a corporate audience?
So very much about kind of, with my military background, talk about how the military kind of brought me to be from a 16-year-old boy to a man, and how it built me to be this, very, very, what I saw at the time, masculine person, who kind of, I am man, I am, I eat meat, I am right, kind of thing.
Alpha male.
Yeah, definitely, very much so. And about how being diagnosed with multiple sclerosis kind of broke me down from that man, to be a shell of the person I was. So I was very much not an alpha male anymore, or what the world's perceived as an alpha male. But how, coming back from the dark places, I was able to pick out things from the military, things from now, to kind of build myself to get rid of that toxic masculinity, and to be that, I'm still a man. I'm not a man who can walk, and I'm not a man who can do things, but I can still do a lot of things. So it doesn't take that toxic masculinity to be the best man you can be. And I also cover quite a lot about disability inclusion, about how you can bring your best self to, is everybody's got potential, and it's just about how to bring that potential out of your employees, or out of yourself, to build yourself on.
Well, I tell you what, I really want to hear you talk, and I think I might dial in next time I get the opportunity. Now, tell me, you've got, obviously you're back doing disabled strongman. So I hear you've got a challenge coming up next week, haven't you? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, actually, next week I'm flying to Canada to compete at the World's Strongest Disabled Man. It's an event that's over 2 days, hosted by the legendary Magnus for Magnusson. If anyone's into strongman, they'll know
Yeah.
exactly who he is. And yes, really competing against people from all over the world to see who is the strongest disabled man. And my training's been very hard, and I've been very regimented, sticking to everything. So I feel like I'm second at the moment, but I want that first place, and the first place is going to come next Saturday. I'm going to lift up that trophy and have a good competition.
Well, my fingers will be crossed for you. Have you been doing any more media and podcasts?
Yeah. So I've always on the lookout for new podcasts to I do my own podcast called The Talking Bull, where it brings me back to that part where I was ashamed that I didn't know anything about disabled strongman. So I kind of wanted to push out there about disabled sports. And I've learned so much speaking to disabled athletes from not maybe, speaking to athletes who play wheelchair baseball, who play sled hockey. And I've actually spoken to someone who, an American lady called Lyra Dodelin, who, when I was speaking to this young lady, she was saying about how she wanted to get to the Winter Olympics, and she actually made it. She was there, and I kind of had the exclusive that we were going to get her there. And yeah, I'm always on the lookout to see what sport can I get people to learn about.
Yeah.
So there's always new podcasts being released.
And where can you find the podcast?
On YouTube. We're very much on YouTube or Spotify or any streaming platform. But yeah, really enjoy doing it, and I love connecting with people. So
Oh, well, it's lovely to know that you're spreading the word. Finally then, Dave, what gives you the biggest buzz about speaking?
to know that people are taking things away from it, I think you can always tell if you've had an audience captured by the amount of questions they ask. And you always get the generic questions, but the actual questions that delve into your life. I'm an open book. I'll say tell anyone anything. So I love it when people ask the awkward questions, and the questions that they're not sure if they should ask. I'll never get offended by a question, and that's what I really enjoy about it.
Yeah, let's not be too busy being offended by anything.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, thank you. It's been so lovely to chat to you today, Dave. It's really inspirational. And of course, we'd love to chat to you again and find out how you get on next week. We are keeping our fingers crossed for British talent.
Thank you very much, and I'll try and bring the gold home and share
Yeah.
it with everyone.
Oh, I'm so excited for you. It's going to be an amazing experience, whatever happens. It's been absolutely amazing chatting to you as well. And if you'd like to book Dave, all you need to do is contact myself or Steve at Great British Speakers on 01753 439 289, or you can email bookings@greatbritishtalent.com.